Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning at our City Council's budget restructuring meeting. We'll go ahead and get started. Ruth, could you please call the roll? It's going to be one of those days.
Yes, sir. Adamson?
Here.
Bray? Cheatham?
Here.
Johnston?
Here.
Lurick?
Here.
Manon?
Here.
Black?
Here. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 2 is the budget development overview. Finance staff will give an overview of the budget development items related to creation of the city's fiscal year 2019 budget development presentations will be given at this time.
Good morning. Ashley Welsh, Senior Accountant. Don't really have any updates. We are going to be doing revenue next week, so we should be able, once we get that in there, and we go into tax solution, kind of have a better idea of where we're sitting. So that's pretty much it.
That was a brief presentation.
I love that. Those are the best kind.
That's the beginning. Right? What a day.
It'll be a good day.
That's right. Well, good deal. Thank you. It looks like we're going to move into sanitation.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Tom Kirkman, Deputy Public Works Director. We're joined with Brian Weller, Sanitation Operations Supervisor. And we're going to run through the sanitation service level and some of the budget proposals, and I'll turn the time over to Brian.
Thanks. Good morning, Mayor and Council. So, first slide, mission to improve the quality of life for the citizens of Pocatello, providing efficient and cost-effective refuse removal and recycling services. On the next slide, we just casually go through it. As you can see, from 2016 to 17, we've increased about 1,000 or about 100 tons of solid waste. We've increased our 96-gallon service. A lot of folks are getting second carts for their residents. Our commercial containers are up.
Hey, Brian, those second carts for the residents, are they getting more recycled carts or are they getting more?
This is actually the garbage carts.
Okay.
And then our 3-yard containers for the commercial businesses. You can tell we've got an increase on commercial. Our roll-offs that is handled, if you notice, we've got a decrease from last year to this year. That's because last year we had 8 or 10 roll-off boxes out at the malt plant while they're doing their remodel out there, and so that's why we've got the drop there. Temporary containers, you see that we've jumped up almost 400 containers, so we've got a lot more people that's taking pride in their properties, renting the temporary containers to do their cleanup instead of going to landfill. It's just an easier service for them. Recycle carts are up. Again, we're going into, a lot of people's going into second. I believe we might even have a few that's got 3 recycle carts out there. So they're on board of trying to keep stuff out of the landfill. Tons of material recycled. As you can see, it's up about 9 ton. Our compost carts this is early numbers, up 188. On the next slide we're going to show, I believe it's the next slide, a couple slides down, but we've actually got an increase of yard waste carts. We're almost to 1,100. And so that'll be a discussion that we can have. And then the tons last year, this year is 468. And again with that, right now we're currently running our yard waste on Wednesdays and Thursdays. We had a half-a-day route with our garbage with one of the trucks, and they jump in and do the yard waste. We've had to pull off that truck from doing the garbage just to help handle the yard waste. And so next year we're actually thinking that we may have to move this to a 5-day a week. We're having weight issues. Yesterday we had one of our trucks that was pretty heavy. And so the only way we're going to be able to do this is possibly spread it out to Monday through Friday, be picked up on the garbage days. But that'll be a discussion going into next year, probably the best way to handle it. Next one's our output summary. Population size, breakdown of all of our employees that we have throughout our department. We show in here that we have our 2 curbside recycling full-time employees, and then this year we're showing that we actually have 2 full-time operators throwing our yard waste trucks. And to cover all of our pickups with residential, commercial, and roll-off, the cover vacation, sick leave, workers' comp injuries. We've got 5 seasonal employees brought on for this year to help us get through the summer, leave pickup in the fall. Output for capital assets, we currently have 10 rear load trucks. We retained one of those trucks that will be designated strictly for glass. So we're done with the glass on that, and that'll be the only time that truck will be used is to unload the container, which starts Monday. We increased our roll-offs by 1. We're trying to prepare for any possibilities of major construction up at the North Gate addition. We want to make sure that we have the equipment to provide service up there if they do call upon us. Currently, we have 14 side load trucks. 8 of those are used for garbage, and the other 6 are for recycling and yard waste. And then that gives a couple backups on each one of them. So if a truck goes down, then we can get them going. And then we've got 2 retriever trucks, which takes care of our one-way streets. It's left side dump, and we do have a new one coming up. We should be seeing it at the end of this month. And so it'll be a little bigger and should help us out a lot more. But again, it's for the one-way streets. Measures of effectiveness. Again, the yard waste program has expanded. Like I said earlier, we're almost pushing about 1,100 yard waste carts out, and I'll bet we get at least 4 or 5 calls a day for yard waste, so it's definitely on the uppity up. And we've been able to do that with no increase of employees, using our current full-time employees. Service request, we're pretty good about getting these turned around within 24 hours. If we can't get the service request taken care of, we definitely reach out to the customer or whoever to let them know that we have received it, that this is what we're doing, so it may take us another day or 2 to get to it, but we do have a pretty quick turnaround. And then, of course, we've got the proper removal of tires, paints, that kind of stuff. Usually in the spring and fall, we get a lot of this illegal dumping, tires, paints, sitting around by commercial containers, so we go through and pick that up. Key accomplishments. These are services that we provide without fees. So we do the fall leaf collection, which is really big. Last year we ran 1 truck. A couple days we had to run 2 trucks because so many leaves out there in the compostable bags. And again, that's what we're going to push for this year, is make sure we get the word out that the leaf bags are compostable, so it's easier to take. We do have assistance program for the elderly, where our drivers will actually go up to the residents, grab their garbage and recycle cart, bring it down, dump it, and return it back to the residents, so they don't have to drag it down their driveways or whatever. We run the Christmas tree disposal. We've got 3 locations. We place roll-off boxes. We empty those out usually daily in a commercial truck, and then we take them out to Ross Park, and the Parks Department usually shreds them up and uses them for decor. We've got our Partner in Pride service. We currently have 6 3-yard containers and 4 17-yard containers. That's a 48-hour service that you can get for a free cleanup at your property. We expanded that last year, going to the 6 and 4. That's really put a little burden on us, but we're definitely getting through it. And this fall, after it's done, we'll be talking to Tom, and we may have to take that another direction this next year. So just a little heads up on that. 1,260 pickups of 3-yard containers that wasn't counted for in the previous slide, and then 312 roll-offs that we've pulled also. Again, this is in the Partner Pride service. As you can see in our issues and concerns, the top 3 are pretty basic. Keep the manpower to what we need for increase of demand of services. Again, with Northgate Addition, we'll see what happens up there, that we may be going to the mayor and council for new employees to help provide that service. Maintain our competitive rate structure, keep that going. September, we do have to go into our rate study, and so that'll set up our budgets and stuff for the next 5 years and see what we're looking at. Capital replacement programs, just a heads up, throw it out there that for a rate study, I'm going to try to impose that we start looking at front load for commercial businesses to hopefully reduce injuries on our crew and a little more effective service. And with that, we wouldn't have to lay off employees, but we might be able to reduce the number of seasonal employees that we'd have to get by doing that. Two of our biggest issues and concerns is with the recycling market going on with the battle overseas. Our contract does expire with Western Recycling at the end of this year, December of 2018. We're going to a study session on June 14th, and we do have Rick coming over from Boise, who is in charge of Western Recycling. And so he'll be able to give a presentation of what's actually going on. He's got more answers than we do. And so we felt it'd be important to have him come over and present the recycling and the direction that he wants to take us, and he'll lead us and we'll follow. And then customer cooperation, keeping the recycling and yard waste programs going. Office staff's really good about informing the public of what they can and can't put in there. And again, a lot of that's just the education of really trying to get it out there of what they can and can't, try to clean up, especially on the recycling, to keep our loads less contaminated than what there is. And so we do a pretty good job on that, I feel.
Okay, so now we're gonna go to the numbers. So as you can see, there was a pretty big increase in wages and benefits. There was a position change, and there is a budgeted retirement in there. And then an overall increase in operating lines of $171,000, which we'll go over that in the next slide. So as you can see with the revenues, it looks like they're programmed to use about $375,000 in reserves. They have an additional, a little over $2 million. So with the rate study coming to an end, that's pretty normal to start using up some of those reserves, and then we'll take that into account when we do the next 5-year study. So they have 41 employees and about $70,000 in part-time dollars. Any questions on any of those?
Ryan, I'd be very interested in knowing what's the life expectancy of these trucks. I mean, you've got a lot of trucks.
With our side loads, we've got them on about a 7-year rotation because the use, and not really abuse, but because the arm mechanism, usually right about that 6-year mark, we start getting a lot of wear and tear on the arm, and so the increase of maintenance on it really starts going up. And so instead of keep dumping, $20,000, $30,000 in the truck to keep going, it's just better to go with rate study and replace these trucks.
Their maintenance division does an incredible job. They have a really good maintenance department that keeps those trucks running really good. That's, when you have these scheduled events every day, they have to be there every day, and they do a wonderful job on keeping that fleet moving. So they do a great job.
Okay, on to the next one. Of course, you can see proposed rate, 3% increase for the revenue. Rentals and leases, $14,450. We've got one in there for repairs, maintenance, tires. We've been able to spend a little more money on tires for our trucks, but we're getting anywhere from 11 to 13 months of wear out of the rear tires. With the wear and tear that we get from the landfill, it really chews them up. And so we're spending a little more money, so we've increased the budget for that. Again, it's worth the expense if we don't have to buy 2 sets of tires per truck every year. It saves us right about $2,500 to $3,000 a truck.
You're just getting a higher quality?
Yeah, it's a better studded tire or a better traction tire. So we can get, like I said, between 11 and 13 months use out of it. And we've kind of got this rotation right now to where we're actually starting to rotate them right about October, November. So the trucks have got new tires going into the winter, which gives them a lot better traction, less time of putting chains on to get us up and down the hills during the winter unless it's really bad. So it's been a good move for us. Utilities, landfill charges has gone up, so we've got an increase shown of $128,830, and of course that's just going back to the previous services of temporary containers, the amount of garbage that's being hauled up there. We don't have any control over that, so there is that increase. Everything else is pretty much the same. As I said previous, we do have a retriever truck that's coming here. This is a sole source truck that we actually had made to our specifications. It's the only one throughout the country, so this was a special build for us, so hopefully it'll serve the purpose and won't give us any headaches of going down the road. And
What's a retriever truck?
so it's a small truck. I don't know if you've seen, we've got an orange one that runs around town. It does all of our one-way streets because we can only take our automated side down the right sides. This truck will actually have the arm on the left side, so it hits 4th, 5th, Center, Clark, Main, and Arthur. So that way, of course, we can't go against traffic, and it reduces my operator out on the street for chance of getting hit.
Before they used to
A
have,
left-handed truck.
Yes.
before they used to have to grab the cart and run it to the
Put it at
back
the
and dump
back.
it.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Field trip, come on down, we'll show you.
That's what I'm thinking.
So it's well worth it. I'll make it worth your time.
Good.
So anyway, we've got that in for $190,000. That's the price that they gave to us on this truck, and we've got really good support from Peterbilt down in Salt Lake on this. So again, that should be here at the end of the month. Rate study, like I said, we've got that coming up in September. So there's a $40,000 budget there. We would like to impose a new wash bay out of our new building out on Garrett Way with the street department. That there's a company down in Salt Lake that builds these. They sell them to the military. They use them to wash the trucks, and it recycles the water. So the quote I have currently on my desk is $295,000, but we're able to recirculate and reuse the water. So instead of washing the trucks, it's going down the drain. We're actually going to be able to recycle it, and so that should help out a little bit. Utilities at the new building, we're looking about $60,000 increase on that. It's a bigger building, so of course you buy bigger, you're going to pay more. So we got that in there. We do have in the budget for a new pickup. We've got a pickup that's got a few dents and dings in it, and it's starting to cost us money to keep it up, so it's time to replace that. And then recycling cart charges, again, that'll be a major discussion on June 14th. We're looking at about a $200,000 increase on that. So that'll be a discussion in June for there.
Is that about what we spend on recycling now? About $200,000 annually?
Right now, we're capped at $70 a ton, and so we're, about 100,000?
I think it's around 100,000.
Right about
Because I know it's
100,000
going to
a year.
more than double.
So
when,
they're proposing $135 a ton.
which is actually a pretty good deal compared to what others are getting.
Right. So,
So that's a larger discussion that we'll have on the 14th, and Debbie, you can come if you want. China's doesn't want to take the recycling anymore unless it's with a 0.5% of contamination. So the sorting facilities fees are going up, and therefore the markets are just kind of crashing on recycling. So on the 14th is when we're going to have a real serious discussion on the direction we want to go on recycling. So, but we've put it in there to add that just based upon a projection, but that's something that we can work with on the 14th.
Okay, the next one's proposed fee increases. Of course, with rate study, it's shown pretty much a minimal increase. Looks like anywhere from about 40 cents up to maybe a couple dollars increase, depending on the service. Same way with our 3-yard containers, increase is actually pretty minimal. Again, rate study, so I feel we're doing pretty good there. Roll-off boxes, our services for that, 17-yard and they're 32 yards. Anywhere, again, from $3 to about $3.50, $4 increase. So they're still getting pretty good service for the small increase that we're providing them. And that's all I got. Any questions from Mayor and Council?
We have the 2 different sizes of carts for
Yes.
collection. Does it make any difference in terms of our efforts on these carts? Would it be better for us to have consistent one size fits all?
The reason why we went with 2 carts is, so we've got a 96-gallon cart and a 64-gallon cart. We found out a lot of the elderly people, they don't fill up a 96-gallon cart, so like for about $1.17 difference in their bill, they can go with the 64-gallon cart. It's easier for them to handle, to maneuver. They don't need, that extra 30 gallons of cart sitting there for nothing. A lot of the ones that we actually go pick up the garbage on our assistance list has only got 1 or 2 bags in it. And so, again, for somebody that's single, elderly, it's a good move for them.
Doesn't make any difference in terms of our costs?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, questions? Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Good job, Brian.
Thank you.
Looks like our water pollution control.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Jeff Mansfield, Public Works Director and City Engineer.
Levi Adams, the intern superintendent for WPC.
Ready?
Go ahead and turn the time to Levi.
The mission for the WPC department is to collect and treat wastewater at the lowest practical cost while meeting regulations and providing excellent customer service. As far as the output summary, the population served is around 54,000 people with 17,000 active accounts. The staff at WPC, we are not fully staffed right now. We have a opening as far as the superintendent position is concerned, and we also have a vacancy for a maintenance mechanic welder position. We're also having difficulty filling our part-time positions. There's a lot of open jobs out there, and it's difficult to get part-timers to even apply for the positions.
Levi, is that a new thing? Finding it hard to get part-timers to apply, or is it a...
It's been getting harder and harder. We used to have, a long list of qualified candidates that would put in, but now it almost seems like we're fighting the other departments as well as who can pick up the quality candidates first. I think with the job market being what it is, most of the qualified candidates have positions already. So you're getting a lot. We've actually waited. We're hoping that we can get some ISU students that are looking for summer work right now. We do have 1 part-time position filled, and we have 2 more vacancies that we need to get filled.
What kind of jobs are the part-time positions?
They're basically laborers. They are assistants to the full-time employees. One is for the grounds maintenance department, so he would help mow and trim, that kind of stuff, and the other people would be helping with the collections crew out in the city, jetting and cleaning the lines. Last year, the output summary. Last year, we increased the rates due to the financial plan, the 5-year financial plan, from $29.75 to $30.55. With that increase, we treated an average of 6 million gallons a day at the treatment plant, which totaled 2.2 billion gallons of water that were treated and put back into the Port Neuf River. We became a lot more efficient with the removal of phosphorus. We removed 90% of the phosphorus in the wastewater, down from 48 pounds a day down to 15 pounds a day of phosphorus. That was due to the permit limits that became active as of December 31st of last year. And
That was a big expenditure on our part.
that was a very large expenditure on our part.
And it's worth it appears.
It is working extremely well. We now have a large safety net at the end of our plant. We meet all of these permits. We used to treat this biologically, which worked well, but if there was an upset, there was really nothing that we could do. But now having the filters at the end of the plant we can treat it chemically, and so we do not have any more upsets. There's a safety net at the end of our plant. Because of that, that allows us to have growth within the city without having to do any more building to the plant itself or improvements.
As you can see there, our permit limit is 25.1 pounds per day, and we're averaging about 15 pounds per day of phosphorus that we're discharging. So we're doing a good job out there.
Does that permit limit vary according to the amount of water you're treating?
It's based off of pounds. So as the increase in flow would go up, those pounds would increase as well. As far as what we would discharge, the limit itself is set that is not going to increase. So like I said, right now we're treating 6 million gallons a day, which averages out to about 15 pounds. At that same concentration, obviously if the flow doubled, the increase then would be in the pounds would double as well. Any more questions? No. And then also that we did reline over 10,000 feet of sewer pipe within the city. We also have a pre-treatment program with the city of Pocatello where we monitor our significant industries such as Amy's Kitchen and On. And they're also highly involved in inspecting all of the restaurants in town to make sure they comply with all of the grease regulations. We are highly involved with the education within the residents themselves with the Can the Grease program and then also with the drug take-back program. That drug take-back program has been highly effective. We've collected, like I said, over 1,500 pounds of medication that would otherwise be put in the landfill or dumped down the sewer drains. Again, the collection system, we cleaned over 236 miles of pipe, which is basically all of the pipe sizes from 8-inch down, and then several miles of the larger diameter collection systems pipes. I said some of the key accomplishments from that phosphorus project that we have recently finished up was we changed from chlorine disinfection to a UV disinfection system. It's a lot safer for the employees and it is very effective. We have had 0 violations on our E. coli over the last year. And again, not only did we put that safety net of the filters at the end of the thing, we improved our biological treatment of the phosphorus as well by adding increased secondary part of the plant with new swing zones and new anaerobic zones. And then again, here is a slide highlighting that filter system that is at the end of our treatment plant just before disinfection. With that, we should be able to handle any of the increases in the city as far as flow or the other industries that come into town. Some of the issues and concerns that we have at WPC. Filling out our staff, finding a superintendent and finding a qualified mechanic welder, filling, like I said, part-timers as we need, and developing a succession plan. Our plant staff is growing old. The numbers are slightly skewed as far as the average age. We hired a new individual that was 19 years old, so he makes all the guys that are 50 years old that age level come down a little bit. So we do have a few young gentlemen out there that are, that are valuable, but they're still learning the jobs. We need to make sure that we have a plan to replace those older employees and all of that experience. And again, as always, the aging infrastructure. We can only repair and replace so much. I mean, it is a continual battle to keep up on infrastructure. Some more issues and concerns is the new NPDES permit. Our permit expired at the end of 2017. We did reapply in March. There is a transition for who is going to be the regulator over City of Pocatello from the Region 10 EPA to now the local state-run Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. Hopefully that will be a positive turn for the City of Pocatello, because we'll have local enforcement and local understanding of what we are about and what we are trying to accomplish, rather than having someone in Washington trying to make decisions on how our wastewater is being discharged. We also have some unsewered areas in Johnny Creek and Mean Creek, and then again this year the financial plan will need to be updated.
So we'll go to the numbers. As you can see in personnel, wages and benefits, just a slight increase due to step moves and changes in medical. And then the overall increase is about 1.2 million. We'll go over those in a next slide. So actually, with their increase of revenue per the rate study, they're actually building reserves, which is expected because the project that we were working on has come to an end. So we're trying to build back up those reserves that we used to start that project. There is 27 employees when they're fully staffed, and they have about $64,000 in part-time. We also have capacity fees. So anytime we get revenue for capacity fees, goes into a separate fund. Once this fund builds enough reserves, we are able to make a debt service payment. So we're still in the building of reserves in this one. And the debt service, we budget our debt service payment out of a separate fund to kind of keep it separate and for regulations on our bonds. So this is just showing the debt service payment, and we just fund it through a transfer from WPC. And the phosphorus project should be completed this fiscal year, so we don't have any budget authority needed for fiscal year 19. Any questions?
What's the capacity of that plant?
Right now, average daily flow of 12 million gallons. We can handle peak flows of up to 18 million gallons a day. Right now, the filter system at the end can handle 22 million gallons. The major bottleneck is the headworks at the top, at the first of the plant. But the way the headworks was built, it was built so it could be mirrored on site for limited increase in cost to put that on. Okay, a budget authority increase. One of the things we do need to increase is the chemical use. For the filter building, there is an increased use of alum to remove the phosphorus from the wastewater, and then a polymer to help coagulate the alum that has been put in. We are replacing 2 trucks, and then the major part of that replacement is a new dredge for our biosolids application. The dredge itself is, I would say, 30 years old, so it is time. We're being nickel and dime to death on this piece of equipment. It just needs to be replaced, and it was put into the financial plan to be replaced in this year.
And maybe explain to them how critical that dredge is to the operation.
The dredge itself is basically the linchpin. We store all of our biosolids throughout the year in a lagoon on site, and then we use the dredge to remove the biosolids from the bottom of this lagoon. There's no real other way to get it out of there if we don't have this piece of equipment. There is no real alternative. It's the way the system was designed. I don't even believe we can lease a piece of equipment if something were to happen to this. So it is a very crucial piece in the biosolids application. We have enough storage for approximately 16 months, so a little over a year. But once that's full, there's no other place to put our biosolids. And then also a major increase is going to be in the capital cost of a $2 million new administration building. The current administration building is actually a remodel of the house that was on site that the former superintendent lived in. The house was built in the 50s. and then was later remodeled, I believe, in the 70s. And its time, its life expectancy is over. We need a new administration building. And then also, there's a fee that is going to be associated with the new permit coming from Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. We currently do not pay the EPA for our discharge permit, but to fund Idaho to run the program, it's going to be based off of population, and that figures out to about $50,000 a year. So that is going to be a continual fee. As the population increases within the city, then the fee itself will actually go up. Every city in the state is paying this fee. It looks like a lot, but the city of Boise was paying their $320,000 a year is what the cost is for their fees or for their permits. Again, we're proposing the fee increases of, I believe it's 3% to residential and single families, as well as the industrial facilities. We charge industries by the volume that they discharge to us, as well as the strength of the wastewater that they send to us. Again, there's also an increase in the connection fees. I believe it's another 3%, with the majority of them being the 3/4 inch water line connections for most residential homes, and then that fee is also with the collection side as well, one for the treatment plant, one for the collection system. You can see with this slide that the rates from the city of Pocatello are extremely competitive. We're always compared to Idaho Falls, but they have a lot different situation than what they have with that power plant, so it's difficult to compare ours with the city of Idaho Falls. But as far as the surrounding communities, we are extremely competitive and very effective with the dollars that we do charge. And then some future needs that may be coming up, discussion of composting of our biosolids, if there were some issues with the land that we apply on our biosolids to, or if there becomes an actual demand for the product that we could produce from the biosolids composting. Also with the effluent reuse, if there was some issues with the permitting, if the restrictions became too strict, then reuse would become a different option.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
So how do some of those other cities that, when you did the tour, well, I think Arlen did the tour, and I'm not sure, like up in Missoula
The
or
composting.
something?
Oh, the composting,
yeah, the
yes.
composting tour.
Thank you.
How are they making that work then? If it's not cost effective, are they just saying they want that and they're going with it anyway, or do they have a higher demand for compost up there, or?
It was depending on the city itself. It was one where the council and the city wanted a use of their composting, the composted product. And also, the way the city of Pocatello is set up, we own all of the farmland that we apply to, so we don't have to deal with permitting other farmers or finding a place to put our biosolids. And also, we are extremely close to the land, so fuel cost is not really much of an issue. The average round trip of a truck that applies biosolids is less than 5 miles, so out and back. So we are effective with the cost to apply our biosolids, as well as the time it takes. For example, the city of Idaho Falls land applies their biosolids year-round. Unless the ground is frozen, they are putting biosolids somewhere on farmland within that valley, where we do ours in about a 6 to 8 week period in the fall, and that's it. So those costs, because we are efficient with the way we do things now, the cost switching to composting it doesn't weigh out.
So the dredge brings the product out during that period of time. We have city trucks that haul it,
Yes.
your department trucks.
Yes.
Okay. And so the 16 months that you can store
Right.
is,
It's just in that lagoon itself.
Okay.
So like I said, because we only apply in the late summer, early fall, we store all of those biosolids that we produce year round. We are producing biosolids all year long, every day, but we can't apply it due to the ground being frozen or crops on the fields. So during those times, it is stored in that lagoon. Like I said, the capacity of that lagoon is a year's worth of biosolids plus some. So we always have space in that lagoon. But if we weren't able to remove those biosolids during our application season, then it would essentially fill up.
And we're leasing that land to McNabb's or somebody?
There is 3 different farmers right now that have leases. One is McNabb's, one is Ed Smith and his son-in-law, and then one is Loveland's.
If the input to the plant increases, how are we going to handle increased biosolid in the lagoon?
Right now, one of the options that we have is we can land apply in the spring as well. Some of the farm land is using alfalfa. So after each cut of alfalfa, we're able to land apply. The volume does not increase evenly with the amount of flow that comes in, if that makes sense. So if you're doubling the flow in water, you may not be doubling the flow in the solids that is produced. And if it becomes a point in time, that's when you begin to look at composting. Do we compost on site? Do we just dry our biosolids and apply a dryer? Right now we apply what is called a wet, meaning that what we apply is about 4.5 or 5% solids in the truck. So it is a liquid that is applied to the fields. You could take that liquid and dry it and increase capacity quite a bit, and then use a different type of spreading mechanism on the trucks instead of just a tank.
Rich, you could be an expert in this.
Used to do that on the farm.
It's not much different.
No.
And then again, future needs is the infrastructure continues to age and needs to be repaired and replaced, and then rehab on the existing lift stations throughout the town. Yeah. Is there any more questions?
I had a question about the administration building.
Okay.
The $2 million on that. I guess I was kind of surprised to see that on there, and we have a lot of things in the city we need to do. I'm just wondering if we have to do that now, or if we can put that off, or what.
It was built into the rate study. It was a need that was put out before we did the last rate study, and it was put off to the end so we could build the reserve. So we did have the capital to pay for that.
So do we have the capital to pay for that then with the reserves then?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's been in their capital improvements plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in
And
there.
that's why
So when it's an authority increase, it's been built in, but it's not.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's not something we just
Money's
decided.
there,
this year.
money's there, it's
Okay.
just, okay.
It's been forecasted and planned, and we decided to wait
All right, that makes sense.
until after the phosphorus upgrade was done.
Right.
And we debated about, I don't know, this was probably before my time, but I think it was considered whether or not to do it with the phosphorus upgrade, but that was kind of reaching the limits of where we wanted to be at with that project, and so we decided to wait a couple of years to do it after the phosphorus upgrade.
Okay.
That would have been the ideal time to do it, but it was just too much at once.
Yeah, so it's already built into there, and they're actually building reserves this year, even with that expense in their budget. So.
And hopefully it's not 2 million, but move on.
Yeah.
I'd rather have it that and then come back and ask for more money later.
And just to let you guys know, we're getting ready to have an open house, a ribbon cutting out there at the WPC with the new facility. I don't know that we have a date picked yet, but we would like to have you guys all out there and see it. And at that time, you're welcome to walk through the administration building and see what it really is and see why it needs to be replaced. So.
Okay, I have a question. This isn't necessarily for Levi, but Jeff, Sanitation had $40,000 in for the rate study. WPC has $50,000 in for the rate study. Water, I skipped ahead. I'm sorry, Justin, but I skipped ahead, and water has $40,000 for the rate study. How much does this rate study cost? What does it cost?
We don't know exactly yet. We're estimating it's going to be around $150,000.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know exactly why some of them have 40 and some of them have 50, but it's going to be around $150,000 what we're estimating to do the rate study.
Okay.
So you're splitting that between
It should
those
be
departments?
split between the three utilities. That makes sense, and it makes sense that there's a 50 and a 40, couple 40s to me too. But
Yeah.
I just didn't know how much it was going to cost. It seems like before in the past it was a $75,000
Yeah,
expense or something like that. But
Last time.
I think so.
It was in the 90s last
Yeah.
was it? So just this is a holder, and hopefully it's not.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Alrighty.
Awesome. I've learned a lot today, thank you.
Come on out, I'll teach you some more.
I'm afraid you would.
Thank you.
Hey, he needs a couple part-timers out there.
I can cut the grass, maybe.
There you go. A lawnmower with your name.
Welding, that's another story.
Welding might be difficult, but super. Thank you, Levi.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Today we're here to talk about the water department, and obviously we know that water is essential for human and supporting life and safety. Our mission is to provide a safe and reliable and adequate supply of drinking water for our customers at the lowest practical cost. Services provided, as you can see with our water production last year, was a wet year. We received about 17 inches of rainfall, and so our production was lower last year than in 2016. 2016 is actually about an average year within our 10-year tracking. So generally we produce right around 4.8. And 4.8 is actually lower than the previous 10 years where our average was up at 5.3. So we know that water conservation and other measures are lowering the demand, and we're prolonging our resources there.
So, Justin, I have a quick question. Sorry to interrupt you, but we just sat through WPC, and we have 2.2 billion gallons going out of the end of the treatment plant. If we were to recycle that, how does that affect your 4.8 billion?
That could lower our peak usage during the summer months if that was utilized for, say, irrigation purposes or other things. So,
okay. It wouldn't drop at 2 billion though.
It potentially could, yeah.
Okay.
So we performed just over 1,500 water quality samples, measuring for different contaminants within the system, making sure that we're in full compliance with regulations. Some of those are taken on quarterly, annually, or even semi-annually sampling schedule. Our service requests had significantly increased this past year. The reason being for that is the increase in construction activities. We're going out and performing a lot of locating services and remarks on some of those projects, so that's reflected in that number. Service repairs, renewals, there's a slight increase there, 462 services replaced or renewed. Our water main breaks, we've kind of plateaued in what we expect. We would love to see this number come down and continually come down, which it has, most of our leaks were up into the high 30s and low 40s in the past. So we know that we're targeting some of the right areas with our capital improvement projects and working with GIS records and grabbing more data so that we know how to target that. Valve exercising and hydrants flushed, those numbers are slightly down. We lost 7 employees this last year, so we had a high turnover. It was a challenge keeping some of these numbers high during the year, so that's reflected there. However, with our water main replacement projects, we were able to actually achieve a little bit higher rate there and replaced about 2 miles of pipe. So we've kept that on track. Population served. Currently our water system serves not only the entire population of Pocatello, but areas outside within the surrounding community in the county. We've got 3 distinct divisions with 44 full-time employees and 4 seasonal employees that we bring on during the construction season and summer months to assist with flagging, extra trucks on some of those replacement projects, and overall maintenance there.
Do we have chemists that actually test the water, or technicians? How is that done?
Some of that's done in-house out at the wastewater treatment lab. So we utilize the services of their lab out there. We also have to outsource certain laboratory requirements through just local labs. Here's an overall itemized list of our capital assets. So we maintain 277 miles of distribution and transmission main. Some of that ranges between 30-inch all the way down to a 2-inch on some of the distribution piping. And then of course there's associated services to those water mains. Wells, we have 21 active wells. Those have the pumping capacity to deliver approximately 54 million gallons per day. On average, Pocatello delivers 13 million gallons per day. That's on an average day. And then during the peak of our season in the summer months, we can produce about 32 to 36 is what we see on average.
Do all those wells interconnect? If one went down, could it be cross-connected to another well?
Yeah, so many of our wells, 19 of our wells are interconnected within the valley. 2 of our wells are on a separate system. It's a satellite system out at the airport facility. And so those aren't interconnected with the city. It's too far away. But yeah, and the way those wells operate, they're based on pressure settings around the system. So once the system senses a pressure drop due to demand, another source may pick up in that area. So we have a high number of storage tanks and booster station and pressure reducing valves in comparison to our neighboring communities. That's due to the fact that our water system is a little bit more challenging. We've got a wide variety of benches and foothills on both sides of the valley, and ravines in between some of those foothills as well. And so it's a little bit more expensive as far as the infrastructure that's involved within our system in comparison to City of Idaho Falls. We have about 45 pressure zones, including the main zone within the valley, whereas we're always compared to Idaho Falls. Idaho Falls has 1 pressure zone, for instance. So lower number of tanks and booster stations and other things, but they've got a high number of wells, similar to our system. And then some of the associated fittings and other things as far as fire hydrants, valves, service lines that we maintain. And then we've got backup generators that are strategically located at various sites, booster stations or wells, due to power outages or other things. That's a requirement. So. Measures of effectiveness. So the Consumer Confidence Report is our annual report to our consumers, and reports the quality of our water. We're happy to report in 2017 that we had no violations. So we're 100% in compliance, and that's our target every year. We also entered our water sample into our AWWA Intermountain section. They did a taste test competition, and so we were actually able to take best of show. They broke that out into groundwater sources as well as surface water sources and broke that out, but we took the overall best tasting water. So we're actually eligible to enter a sample into the national AWWA, so we're planning on doing that this next month. We also had minimal interruptions in water service. Our target is to not shut off water for any longer than we have to. Overall, our target is below 2 hours of shutting those down. So we're actually able to make a lot of repairs under pressure. There's certain instances where you may have a break that's longitudinal or a crack that has to be cut out and repaired that way. And so, but we try and minimize that as much as we can. The integrity of our water system is right in the median, so we're very comparable with other utilities. That's a benchmark study that we used within AWWA. And so generally that's 1 leak or break per 10 miles of pipe, so the 10.1 per 100 miles. If you think of it and break it down, that's 1 per 10 miles of pipe, so we feel that that's pretty good. And then we've got a slide later that compares some of our rates locally, but we feel that we keep those at reasonable cost. Some of our key accomplishments this last year, we did some upgrades at the Johnny Creek Booster Station, activated a transmission main, and installed a 750-gallon surge tank that added resiliency and helps protect against any power loss or any other equipment failure that we might have there. We also added 2 pressure zones within the Johnny Creek area. That's part of the compliance with DEQ to lower our pressures. There were certain portions of town where we were exceeding the 100 PSI mark, and so Johnny Creek was a real focus on that because we had pressures ranging from 50 pounds all the way up to 200 pounds. And so we've been making progressive phases of that project to reduce that and get those pressures under control.
So Justin, we're talking about the pressures. We've had some complaints about pressures in the Johnny Creek area. And so I just want to make it clear to everybody watching and anybody watching in the future, this is a DEQ requirement that we're being put under to meet these pressure zones. And are we too low? I mean, is the pressure too low, or is it just, we remember when our sprinkler would shoot 400 feet opposed to 40.
Right. No, it's actually the opposite. Our pressures were too high.
Okay.
We were experiencing, like I said, anywhere between about 45 pounds all the way down to 200 psi. And so that's really hard on plumbing fixtures and pipes and leakage. With that high of pressure, you're actually doubling the amount of water that you're shooting out of a hose or a feature. And so there's some waste of resources there as well. We're lowering that right within the operating range and requirements of IDAPA codes, and that's what.
What is IDAPA?
So that's the.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. IDAPA, it's just
The
IDAPA.
operating rules that we have to administer and operate our system within. And so, like Justin said, they've got that requirement that your system needs to be within 40 and 100 psi. And so the Department of Environmental Quality has been working with us on a compliance agreement schedule to help us get our system within that code. There may be some areas that may be slightly outside of that, or that may be slightly higher than that, but they're working with us to help us try to get everything in compliance with IDAPA code.
I guess the question is we've been too high, our pressures have been too high. We are not reducing anybody to the amount that is too low now. We're within the code, we're within what we need to be, and as I understand it, and Jeff and I and Justin, you and I have had the discussion a number of times, that we are really on the high end of that, inside the right range, 40 to 100 psi.
Right.
In there.
Yeah.
And so people are used to a higher pressure, but we're not outside of code, we're not outside of the rules and regulations, and they'll probably start saving on fixtures inside the house.
That's correct. And even their water usage could go down a little bit due to just that waste that I was talking about before.
And you mentioned earlier that we're in a valley, like everybody knows we're in a valley, and so that makes our pressure zones fluctuate quite a bit. And so working with DEQ, we're getting those to all level out correctly.
Yep. Yeah, as best as we can.
IDAPA stands for Idaho Administrative Procedure Act.
Okay.
There you go.
Hey,
Idaho Administrative Procedure
I
Act.
knew it was close, but I didn't want to get it wrong.
I think that we just always call it IDAPA, and I don't know that anybody ever knew what it really meant.
Having pressures that are outside of that range are detrimental to the health and safety of the public. If you've got pressures that are too low, you have risk of contamination and potential surges that come into the pipes. If you have pressures that are too high, you risk damaging not only the piping, but also you risk having injury or impact to your home and to the piping and the fixtures within your house, like you said, Mayor. And so really they set that just for the health and safety of the public.
Have the complaints that you said we received, are the complaints that the pressure has been too low?
Yeah, the pressure's too low, but what I
But that's
really want to
compared to
make
what-
sure,
Yes.
what they used to be.
When it was too high,
We
then when you
re-
lowered it, now they think it's too low, but it's within what's required,
Well,
okay?
the ones that are really having an issue is they were up in the 180 psi range, and we've reduced that down to 100 psi, and they're just used to that pressure, and they're seeing it drop a little bit.
The most noticeable thing and complaint that we've received on is the irrigation systems. All of the residents have an individual pressure regulator within their house that already adjusts that pressure down, and typically those are set between 60 to 70 pounds, and that is to protect those individual fixtures within the house. However, your irrigation systems connect outside of that, and so if your sprinkler company comes in and designs around that pressure, which typically you wouldn't want to do because you're getting a fine mist at that point. You actually want to reduce that and get large drops of water. It's more beneficial watering than the high misting that you would receive with high pressure. And so there's some adjustments with that. They may see that, you know, the spacing of their heads is now too far apart because they can't hit the neighbor's fence now. So.
Is there also, in addition to saving on fixture costs as well as water use, is there an environmental impact regarding the pressure? I mean, does it cause trouble when we have really high pressure?
As far as health, with too high a pressure, no. It's actually on the bottom end. With low pressures, like Jeff
You get more
discussed,
contamination? Or?
You have a potential of contamination entering the system if you've got pressures outside of that range. In a fire flow event, we're required to maintain at least 20 psi throughout the system. And so that's why those targeted, you know, day-to-day ranges are between the 40 and 100 psi mark. So.
Thank you.
Yep. So, other accomplishments that we had, we continue our water main replacement project. Like I said, we achieved about 2 miles of replacement this last year. These are some of the neighborhoods that we focused on. Some of them are due to fire flow concerns being too low with the flow rate. We just went through a facility planning study, and they reevaluated our system to see, you know, based on growth and our current demand patterns, where we might be out of line with the requirements. So we select it based on not only just the age and condition of a main, but we also look at serviceability of areas, the impact if we had a potential failure in that area, and who it may impact. You know, say if it's a hospital or a large business or industry like that, what's the potential of that failure? And so we rate those projects and try and fine tune those as best as we can.
Those also areas where you've had a high rate of failure?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. That's one of the factors that goes into it. So it's not necessarily just based on age. You know, we've got pipe that is nearly 100 years old that is still performing very well. Some of our pipe that was installed in the 50s is actually beginning to fail, and that's just based to some of the material changes that they used at that time. So they're not building the pipe as thick as they did back in the early 1900s. So
There's a lot of factors that go into corrosion of pipe. I mean, soil conditions, corrosivity of the water, pressure surges, the pipe material itself. There's a lot of factors that go into, you know, what makes that pipe fail.
And we had some debate in the past over ductile and other types. Have we determined a uniformity, or still up in the air relative to the types of pipes that we're requiring to go into subdivisions?
yeah, so we have opened our specifications to allow PVC pipe to be utilized in certain areas of town. On transmission lines, we still utilize ductile iron based on its properties surrounding pressure classes and other things, and dealing with the surge effects that might happen in that line.
When you replace in those areas, you're replacing with comparable size piping?
We are, yeah, or increasing the size due to, you know, meeting new fire flow demands or other conditions. And so our minimum standard now is 8-inch. There's certain areas of town where, you know, it's an oddball size. They don't produce the 10-inch line as frequently. So we actually will upsize that and get 12-inch because your cost comparison of fittings and other things are actually lower by increasing the size, and it actually allows for more growth and volume within the system as well. So then the last item on here is our meter replacement and upgrade program. We completed our 3rd year and upgraded about 2,000 meters. We're currently within our 4th year, and we'll finalize that within next year and be completely remote read meters or drive-by technology. Issues and concerns, aging infrastructure. As you all know, a lot of this infrastructure was built way ahead of our time, and we're in the era of replacement, and so it's got a high cost to it. And so it's a continuous challenge. We need to stay on top of it, look for cost-effective ways to make those improvements and good decisions. Highland Bench, finding a supply redundancy in that area. We know that that's where growth is highly focused right now. And we have a need for a redundancy within one of the existing supplies up there. That supply feeds about 20% of the population of Pocatello, and there's one source there. And so we need to ensure that we have some built-in redundancy just in case we do have a failure in that transmission line. We do have backups within the station itself, but if we had a catastrophic failure on that transmission line, then we're working against the clock. And we've had that in the past. And so we do our best, but the other challenge with that is siting that well. We've recently gone through a testing and drilling phase where we've selected 3 potential sites for a well field, and what we found is a dry hole in one site and two sites that had high chloride, total dissolved solids, and sulfate. And so it would be, if we developed one of those sources, it could be the worst well that we have in Pocatello. That would be harder water than we already have, and it would just have some aesthetics. It would still meet the regulatory requirements. We could put it online. However, aesthetically, it's not ideal. And so there's those risks with doing that. So we're currently working with an engineering firm, our on-call service provider of Murray Smith and Associates, to evaluate some alternatives on how we supply that area. So
maybe before we go into that budget, Detroit has gone through such an incredible thing with their lead pipes. I think I've asked you this before, but do we have any concerns in Pocatello relative to piping that we as a city need to be concerned about?
Well, there's still the lead and copper rule. That's a requirement that every community water system has to abide by. We test that on a routine basis. In fact, we just reevaluated our sampling sites to make sure that there wasn't any significant changes. So homes that were built in the late 70s are potential sites that would have lead fixtures or other things, or lead soldering. We've gone through efforts within our distribution to remove all lead components out of the right-of-ways, but there's still areas within the property owner's responsibility, say of fixtures or other things that would have some of that lead content in it. So we routinely sample those. The components of our water are not highly corrosive, and so that you don't tend to get the leaching of lead. But it's still a concern, and we sample that. That's part of our requirement.
So on that note, so I know CDBG just got that lead grant. So is there any way we can involve them in this process to, for the property aspect of it? Maybe perhaps give them like, oh, here's a list of the homes that might have the lead issue, and then it's on, I think they're able to go and talk to them, and if somebody qualifies, then they've got the funding to help them resolve the issue.
Yeah, I think that's
I think it'd be a good partnership to work with them on that note.
Yeah, and actually they've kind of reached out to us because their focus has been more with the lead paint, but we did want to at least speak within the group and talk about the components of lead plumbing, and just make them aware if their home was built in the late 70s. Here's the things that you need to look at and be aware of.
What about older homes much older than the 70s. What are the chances that they would have those issues? Is it mostly 70s or?
No, it's not necessarily the 70s. That's when
things
some of the fixtures and requirements had actually changed. They did a revision with the lead and copper within the mid 80s, and then again just recently, I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago, it was the latest revision. And so yeah, prior to those, there's a concern if you've got even galvanized pipe within your system. There's a chance there that you're picking up metallic components that could contaminate your drinking water. So.
And I know it's the homeowner's responsibility if it's in their pipes, but other than getting grant money and if you qualify, what other options do homeowners have to find out if they have a problem? Do you help with that at all, or is that they go to private companies or?
So they can sample their water. They can submit a sample if there's a concern that they have, and submit those to a lab, and then we work with them. If the lead and copper, it's kind of a voluntary thing. We select about 60 various sites, and provide them instructions of how to provide that water sample. It's got to be a first draw. It's got to be after the water's been sitting for a certain period of time, and to see if there's any contaminants that enter from that. But we know within our sites that with our water quality and other things, we've been below the limits on those. And so the problem with Flint, Michigan, it was surface waters that was used that were highly corrosive and contaminant, and with their treatment processes, it just created a perfect storm. So.
I have another quick question. So say there's one in a particular neighborhood, a homeowner tests their water, they have some issues. Does that mean the chances of the rest of the homes in the same neighborhood might have a problem as well? Considering if it's the piping.
It could be a potential if they were built around the same period, and if they still have some of those, same plumbing components within their lines. So.
As far as city-owned lines, though, we don't have any concerns with our city-owned lines. We've replaced the lead pipes and things with the.
Yep.
Okay,
yes.
And so really this is in individual houses, and if they have a concern, then take a sample and then maybe get with the CDBG group to.
Yeah, see if there's any funding.
See if there's anything they can do.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the numbers. As you can see, there's a pretty big decrease in wages and benefits. There was about $90,000 in retirement payoffs budgeted for in FY18. Plus, when we budget for retirement, we budget for them at full family insurance. So you can see that, we had those payoffs, and then the people coming in are making less than the people that left. So that's why there's such a big decrease there. And then there's an increase in the overall operating of about $677,000. We'll go over those in a minute. And then revenues, there is going to be an increase due to the rate study, and I'll let Justin explain this in a minute. But we projected the revenues to go down a little bit, and we'll go over that. So they are projected to use reserves. They have additional reserves of about $2.8 million. So we're just, again, using the rest of the reserves before we go into the new rate study. They have 44 full-time employees and about $67,000 in part-time budget. They also, just like WPC, have the capacity fee that goes into a separate fund to make a debt service payment when there's enough money in there. So for FY19, we're planning on building reserves again And debt service, we do program a debt service payment out of this fund, and it is transferred from water until the water capacity fee has enough to make that payment. And they do have one more, they do have a water construction fund. There's about 2.6 million. We budget to use all of it in case any opportunities come up for water rights or anything else. So that is just a budgeted use of reserves. Any questions? Okay.
So just as a quick recap, like Ashley was speaking to, our revenue increase, we were not being able to hit our target with our projected revenues. It's due to the seasonal shifts and changes that we've experienced, recently with all this wet weather and other things. And so what we utilized was 2017's actual revenue captured and applied 4% for this year and 4% for 2019 as well. And so it's a slight decrease in what we anticipate for revenue, but we feel that this is more of a realistic number versus projecting as high as what they had anticipated within the rate study. So, also within our professional services, as it's been discussed already, an increase due to a new rate study and update there. We've got some of the big shifts and changes are due to less equipment and the need for that. That highly fluctuates year to year based on our replacement schedule of trucks and other things. So overall, there's a slight decrease there. However, there's an increase within our pumping and storage of that Highland well, because we anticipate that we're going to have to build a transmission line that's going to have to pump up that water from the lower main zone or within the valley floor, because we were unable to find a source on the bench area. So. Proposed fee increases. So these were developed by Raftellus in 2014, and these are based on the service charges which are associated with it's a base monthly service charge to recover the costs associated with customer billing, meters, and small distribution mains and other things. So if that service was unutilized, say during the winter months, you've got a lot of winter birds that go south. Well, there's still a cost for providing that service, and so that's what that base fee relies on there. And then we've got our volumetric charges. Those are based on various customer classes, and the volume rates were designed to recover the volume utilized during production and treatment. And so based on the users and their impact to the water system during peak hour demands. So overall, this is what a typical single family customer would look like, and compared regionally as well. So there's just a slight increase. This represents about a 3.3% increase in the typical single family bill. So.
Do you know what other areas are doing? Are they increasing as well? I mean, or are these the increased numbers that we're looking at on this graph?
Yeah, so these are the current numbers, today's numbers and what we've seen when we've gathered all these numbers from these different communities is, yeah, each one of them are going up. Some of them may hold flat for a year, and then there might be a dramatic increase the following year. But what we've tried to do with our rates is actually project 5 years out and smooth that rate increase, and so you're not adjusting every year based on your capital needs. So. And then capacity fees. These fees are based on any new connection to the system. So it's a buy-in method. You're basically buying into a system that's already built, and that has a cost and association to it. So you become an investor in the infrastructure that's already been placed. So. Any additional questions?
I do. So as I'm reading the small print here, Ammons Water is a flat rate for small lots and for large lots. Do you have any idea what the difference between a small lot and a large lot is, and how do they work this flat rate thing?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you how they establish that way of developing their rates, but
they don't have meters, do they? Or do
the
they?
city of Ammon.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ammon does. Yeah. Idaho Falls does.
Idaho Falls does not have meters.
Right. And Idaho Falls is a flat rate as well.
It's a flat rate, but they adjust it even, annually.
Yeah.
But they don't know how much water people are using or any of that, so. Okay. And then Twin Falls, you've got an arsenic treatment. Do we have any reason to think that we may need to implement a arsenic treatment?
My hope is not. We haven't seen anything that's exceeded that. However, regulation changes. There's constant evolution within water quality, and they're always testing and checking for new contaminants that are a potential health risk. So.
Okay. Personally, I think our utilities do a great job. I just have to tell you, both Jeff and Tom, I think they do an incredible job at keeping our systems moving and working and keeping them at a very affordable rate. I mean, as you look at all these other rates that we've seen, it's good, so thank you for that.
Thanks.
Other questions, council? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We will jump down to agenda. Do you have anything else for us, Ashley? Any instructions, what we're doing in the future? Next meeting?
Next meeting is next week at 10 o'clock, I believe. And we will be going over revenue projections for things like franchise fees, sales tax, putting those together right now, going through some projections for you guys to decide what we want to build in for revenue. And then we'll have a better idea of what, kind of where we're sitting, if we can add anything, where taxes will be sitting. So that'll be the 14th. We'll be able to discuss kind of where we're at and what we can do at that point.
Okay. So super then. Thank you very much. Thank you to the utilities. Ashley, thank you for your work, and council, thank you. With that, we are adjourned.